Okay, a few more points about resin recorders. And of course, I've been concentrating on tenor because that's my instrument. Some more questions have come up. Oh, they're not coming through YouTube at the moment, but on what I've said so far in the series. That series finished 5 points on tenor recorder and resin tenor recorder in particular. I covered them in 5 videos. But some other points now. Professional or amateur. I'm not a professional. I've never been a professional musician. I was a trumpet player, but not as a professional. So I'm now 72 and I play tenor recorder just for sheer fun, to be honest with you. But I've learned a lot about it over the years. So I no longer belong to any particular group. And I do it mainly now to while away the winters because I'm very busy in the summer, but not so much in the winter. So I need something to do to keep myself occupied, and I did used to play it before. Now a few other questions. Am I saying that resin is better than wood? No, I'm not. But resin does last a lot longer. The average life of a wood recorder, I'm told, a wooden recorder, is something like 7 to 10 years useful life. Well, resin recorders, if looked after, are just about indestructible, and I recently purchased a used Yamaha tenor recorder which is 30 years old from an orchestra, a professional orchestral player. I think she's retired now, and she didn't have much cause to use it. She's a flautist, and that is 30 years old, and it's almost, well, I would say it's just about immaculate. I don't think you would get that with a wooden recorder. Now, wooden recorder for sheer sound quality I think are a little bit better, although some of the better resin recorders are very close. But some of the top wooden recorders are very good. Top makes, Mollenhar, Kuhn, Merck, some of those top makes. Cheaper ones never buy. But just a point on that, if you're thinking of buying a second-hand one on eBay, you have to be especially careful if it's wood, bearing in mind that it has a shorter life. So that is a thing to bear in mind. But I'm not saying that resin is better. It is more of a problem controlling condensation from your breath when you're playing resin, because wood will absorb moisture and plastic stroke resin does not. But I'm not saying it's better. More advice, get a good teacher. If you're a learner, get a good teacher, especially if you're younger and you're planning maybe a career, or maybe you want to join various groups. Get a good teacher. I think that's important. Yeah, recorders seem to be making a comeback, which is good to know. And there's an increasing number of things by recorder players on YouTube which you can get hold of. And I'm really glad. I think it's been a very, very neglected instrument. An instrument of great colour and tone and variation of sound. And I'm glad to see that recorder playing is making a comeback. Flute comparison. Now the flute, we all know what the flute sounds like, and it's a great instrument. And it's got 3 octaves, I think, plus. Whereas the recorder only has 2 octaves, maybe including 1 extra note. So there's a huge difference. But I actually think the tone of the recorder is better. It's different and it's better. There's a flute. Always comes across with the same sound. It's a pure sound, it's a nice sound, it's pleasing. But it's harder to put variation in tone and colour when you're playing a flute. Whereas the recorder, you certainly can. Not very difficult. It's quite versatile, things you can do with it. Well, if you listen to a flute solo, which I'm not looking a flute, it's a great instrument, but it's one continuous sound with no variation. And I've listened to some great flute players in jazz and the great concert player, also James Galway, and I'm not knocking flute players. I think the flute is a great instrument. It had a victory over the recorder probably because it's got a bigger compass, 3 octaves, and it's pretty uniform sound. Recorder life I've already mentioned. I mentioned the fact that sometimes, let's pick up my notes, which I just dropped on the floor, that sometimes recorders play a bit sharp in the lower register. Well, you have to compensate for that as a recorder player. That's something you can do. If you look at this recorder here, the headpiece, when I put it on, obviously that comes off. You put it on, and I allow an 1/8 of an inch gap on the headpiece, between the headpiece and the main body of the recorder. You won't be able to see it on your picture, but I always allow a gap of an 1/8 of an inch there, and then it plays true, much better. It doesn't play sharp in the low register so much. It can do, but it doesn't do it so much. And that's partly on the player. You have to compensate by the way you're playing. And it's quite a long instrument. It's 26 inches long, almost 26 inches long. So it's quite a big instrument, if I can say this properly. The other thing about low notes is you need to change your embouchure, which might mean your lip formation, when you're going down for lower notes. See if I can demonstrate it quickly for you. Now when I go down for the really low notes, you'll notice how I changed the way I'm playing. My embouchure changes quite a bit, so it's very loose on the low note. It's very, very loose. And hardly touching my lips. Very loose and flabby. And actually some air is escaping from around my mouth when I go down for the low notes, and I find that does work best for me. May not for everyone, we're all different. But that's another secret of playing the low notes as best one can. Right, there was another point I wanted to bring out. If I can find it, which I can't. So we don't need to worry about it, I don't think. But those are the main extra points I wanted to cover. So I'm not saying that resin recorders are better, but I'm saying they do last longer. And as I say, I've just bought one, it's 30 years old. But I would be very reluctant to do that with a wooden recorder. I haven't got a wooden one now, but if I did, I would want to have a new one. But that's ridiculous, because they're about, the ones that I would be looking at are about £800, £900. So they're very, very expensive. So it's just a few more points here which I wanted to cover. So thank you very much. Okay, well there was a thing I forgot, so I've added this bit on. What are the chances of being a professional recorder player in the UK or America? I cannot speak for America, but in the UK, to be a professional recorder player, I would say is almost impossible. I think it's still possible, and there are quite a number, I believe, in the Netherlands and Germany, where countries which have held on to a bigger recorder playing tradition. I mean, Sarah Green, who you will find on YouTube, she's got several things on playing the recorder on YouTube. She's British and she's a professional recorder player, but she lives in Netherlands and she works in the Netherlands. So I think it is almost impossible to set one sight on that in the UK, because here the flute has so considerably replaced what the recorder could do. And as I say, I think in many cases incorrectly, wrongly. I think there's lots which the recorder can do better than the flute, and other things not as well as the flute. I don't deny that. But a professional in which one is paid for playing an instrument is probably one of the weakest things one can go for if you're living in the UK. And as I say, in other parts of Europe, I think you've got a better chance. So that's the bit I wanted to add on.